Hi everyone, it is Akio here. Watch me as I transform this gorgeous model of mine. So my name is Akio, everybody. If you're new here, you're welcome. First off, I'm wiping my model's face with face wipe and micellar water. I'm using Blossom micellar water to clean all over her face, under the eyes. After then, I'm using the moisturizer from Beauty Formula. Yes, Beauty Formula. So I'm using that to keep our face hydrated. After then, I'm using the Blossom Sweat Block to how should I put it now, to lock all the sweat so that the sweat will not be able to gouge out from the face. Then I'm using primer from Classic USA. This primer is a very strong mattifying primer, and it's very affordable. If you're here in Nigeria, it is very affordable. So I'm using that. I'm applying that on our T-zone, the forehead area, the T-zone area. Just applying it gently on our face, all over our face, except under the eyes. I do not apply my primer under the eyes, but I can apply it all over our face, but not under the eyes, because under the eyes are dry already. After then, I'm going to lock everything up with the Kiss Beauty. Then I'm blending in my foundation. For foundation, I mixed 3 shades of foundation. I used 2 shades of Adventure and 1 shade from Blossom in a Nude Story. So I'm going to leave every detail in the description box below. So after then, I'm moisturizing our lip with Vaseline lip therapy. Vaseline lip therapy. So for contour, I'm using Blossom foundation in a Nude Story for contour. I'm so sorry that I didn't even show any of the products I'm using in this video. I'm so sorry. So after then, I'm contouring our nose with that same contour shade, with that same foundation shade that I use for the forehead and the cheek areas. So I'm just blending in with my beauty blender. For my beauty blender, I'm using the FBH Cosmetics beauty blender. After then, I'll be going in with my blush, and for the blush, I'm using the orange shade, only the orange shade from CPD. I didn't mix it. I did not mix it with any other shade. So I'm using only the orange shade from CPD 4-in-1 blush palette. So I'm blending that in all over our cheek. After then, I'm using the Adventure concealer. So guys, like, if you are new here, please encourage me by subscribing to my channel. So I'm just going to blend that in using the other parts of my beauty blender that I've not used to blend in the concealer properly. Down, up, and then down to the nose area, down to the, is it the forehead? Yes, down to the forehead. God, I don't even know what I'm saying, but you see this video, I just have to do this voiceover tonight so that this video will be up soon. So after then, I'm using that same shade. The shade I'm using for the concealer is the lightest shade, 01 of Adventure concealers. This is the lightest shade, 01. So guys, I'm just putting that under her eyes, and I'm going to blend. I told my model to look up while you're blending under the eyes. Always tell your model to look up. So you ask your model to look up, and then I'm just blending that in gently. Please, I don't do it very fast like this video is in fast motion, so I'm just blending that in gently. So to preset the under eyes, I'm using a shade. I'm using the concealer shade from my powder palette. So from my powder palette, I'm using what is the name of this powder palette again? Please pardon me, oh, I'm tired, but I just have to do this voiceover. So to preset, I'm using the concealer shade from my powder palette, Motec. I'm using Motec powder palette. So I'm just taking that shade to preset under the eyes, everywhere that I've highlighted, under the eyes, the nose, the nose, the chin, and the forehead. So I'm applying that with my beauty blender. I'm not using a powder puff this time around. I'm using my beauty blender to apply that on all the parts that have been highlighted. After that, I'm going to use from that same powder palette, I'm using a darker shade for the contouring, the parts that I use cream contour. So now I'm trying to set everything with powder contour, so I'm using a darker shade. After then, I'm going to powder all over her face using her skin shade, using her powder shade from that same powder palette, Motec, to powder all over her face. So that is exactly what I am doing. I'm trying to blend in everything. Then I went back to the nose to apply my powder contour, that same shade that I used for the upper part of the that same powder contour that I used. That is what I'm using for the nose too. So after then, I'm going to blend in with the powder. I'm going to powder all over her face, and then I'm using the setting powder from my powder palette. My powder palette has a setting powder for the nose. So now to set under the eyes and to lift her nose, I'm using Ivy Flawless setting powder in the shade white. I'm so sorry guys, I'm supposed to show you guys all the products. I'm supposed to display all the products that I use, but do not worry, I'm going to leave everything in the description bar below. So to set under the eyes, I'm using the Ivy Flawless Ivy setting powder. It is a white setting powder, so I'm using that to set under the eyes and to lift the nose. After then, I'm going to use my spoolie to brush all the eyelash up, to remove all the impurities like foundation, powders. I don't want that to ruin my brows. After then, I'm going to be using Tema, and the Tema that I'm using is her beauty Tema, to tame down the brows. After then, I'm going to set the brows with that same setting powder from Ivy Flawless and dust off everything before I go in with my pencil. So for today's tutorial, I'll be using brush and pencil. For my brow gel, I'm using Carrots. If you have been following me, if you have been with me on this channel, you know that once I use a particular product, I don't like changing. I don't like, once that product is good for me, I love to stick to that particular product. So I'm using Carrots brown brow gel to line the brows, to bring out the borders of the brow very well, to bring out the details. After that, I'm going to be using my Davis Wood pencil. Please guys, always sharpen your pencils before you use it. So I'm using the Davis Wood brown pencil to finish up the brow work that I've started. So that's exactly what I'm doing. After then, I'm going to be using that same concealer, the same Adventure Concealer 01, to conceal under the brows, the lower part of the brows. And I'm using that same angle brush. It is a very flat angle brush that I'm using. It was that same angle brush that I used to bring out the border. So I'm using that same angle brush for concealing under the eyes. So just taking my time. After then, I'm using the Adventure Concealer, a darker shade, to conceal the inner part of the brows. After then, I'm going up to the brows. I noticed that the upper part was not smooth enough, so I had to conceal. Mind you, if you are doing this upper part, please do not take too much concealer. Do not take too much concealer. That's, as you can see very well from the video, is very faint. After then, I'm using the powder of our shade to powder everywhere. Then that same powder shade, I'm using that same powder shade to blend in and to dry up the concealer quickly. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing it for both sides. For the inner parts of the eyes too, for the inner parts of the brows, I'm using that inner shade that I used to dry up the concealer. So I'll be doing that for the both sides, After then, I'm using the clone whites, and for this video I'm using clone whites. I'm using the Bicham. God, I'm supposed to write these things down, please pardon me. I'm using the Bicham clone whites. I'm using the Bicham clone whites. It is an eyeshadow primer. So that is what I'm using for today's tutorial. So I'm going to blend everything in. So for the crease, for cutting off my crease, I'm using a darker shade from my powder palette, from the Motec powder palette. That is what I'm using to cut my crease and to set the primer. So after then, I'm using the black powder. I don't know why my powder palette came with a black shade, and I normally use it as eyeshadow. I've only used that shade once on a client. She was very dark, so I'm using that black powder for the outer parts of my shadow of my eye, for the outer parts of the eyes, to give it a fine look. After then, I'm going in with my eyeshadow palettes. So these other colors that I'm taking, they are from the eyeshadow palettes. As you can see, that is my eyeshadow palette. So I'm just trying to create a beautiful look. So I'm trying to blend in everything thoroughly. So that is what I am doing. I'm going back to the crease area to cut to blend in everything. After then, I'm using a pink shade. That is the only shade I can remember. A pink shade for the tear dots region. So after then, I'm using my pencil I'm using the Davis black pencil, I think color 01, to line her eyelid. Already she's wearing false lashes, so I'm not going to fix any lash. I'm just going to line the eyelid. So that is what I am doing. I'm doing that for both sides. This pencil is not pigmented, so you have to take your time to get the desired consistency that you want. Okay, so I'm using that same Ivy Flawless setting powder to clean off the eyeshadow that I didn't really want. Oh God, what am I saying? So for the lower lash line, I'm using a brown shade from my eyeshadow palette, to line our lower lash line. Like I said, whatever thing you're doing under that eyes, you have to tell your client to look up. So after then, I'm just dusting off everything, the eyeshadow droplets and the powder and the setting powder. I'm dusting off everything. Using a smaller brush, a small powder brush from my brush collection. So after then, I'm using a powder shade for the highlighter, because I don't want that sharp white looking shade. So I'm using her powder shade from my palette. After then, I'm going to powder all over her face to give it a fine look. So I'm going in again to that outer corner using that same powder shade. That powder is a powder shade, so I'm just using it to give it that sharp edge that I want. So if you have seen this video till this point, please encourage me by hitting the subscribe button, and if you know you do enjoy this video, please do well to share my video. Please recommend my video by sharing my videos. After then, I'm using the Blossom 2-in-1 mascara. Even though the smaller parts is broken, I'm using the 2-in-1 Blossom mascara for the upper lash and the lower lash. The small part is supposed to be for the lower lash, but it is broken, so I'm using the larger parts, and I'm being very careful so that it will not ruin the makeup that I've created. So that is what I am doing. After then, I'm going to, for the lip stain that I'm using is from Classic USA. I'll check and drop everything in the description bar below. Classic USA. So I'm just going to apply that, and then I'm using a Issa and Dose brown lip stain, but I later switched to my pencil. I'm using a brown pencil, shade 03. So I'm just going to blend everything. Blend. I'm just blending. After that, I'm using I'm using a clear gloss from Classic USA. So now I'm trying to bring us the blush details very well. So I'm still using that same orange blush. It was only orange blush that I used for this tutorial, guys. So now I'm using my highlighter. It's like this is a cheek highlighter from Adventure. I don't know if it's still in the market, but after then, I'm using my Adventure highlighter palette. The first one was a single highlighter, so now I'm using the highlighter palette to give the face a very good lift, just applying it under the brows, the bridge of the nose, and the cheekbone. So that's exactly what I'm doing. So for my fixing spray, I'm using the All Nighter fixing spray. So this is the finished look. Ta-da! Our beautiful gorgeous model is here. So guys, my name is Eke Bipade. I am a YouTuber and a makeup artist based in Bayelsa State, Nigeria. To my old and new subscribers, you're welcome. I love you all. Please encourage me by liking this video. Like this video, drop your comments below. If you want to see a detailed parts from the lip, the eyeshadow, the brows, let me know in the comment section.